While it is way too early to begin to understand what happened in this accident, there is a lot we know about mid-air collisions in general and what you can do to avoid them. We talked with our own safety expert, Bruce Landsberg, of the AOPA Air Safety Institute to learn more.
Mid-airs are unfortunately a part of flying. The saying goes that when they put the second airplane up after Wilbur Orville first flew, that the potential for mid-air collisions increased. Over the last 20 years, the average has been about one mid-air collision nationally a month, which on the grand scheme of things is a very, very low number. About 60% of mid-air accidents are fatal. Some people think if you have a mid-air, it's automatically fatal. The answer is no, it's not. But it is significantly worse than GA accidents as a whole. Typically only 1 in 5 is going to be fatal. So mid-air accidents are serious. The good news in all of this is that the trend has very definitely been down over the last 5 years or so. And that could be due to a number of things. In 2011, we had only 7 accidents involving mid-air collisions, again nationwide. And that's significantly less than what had been shown up before. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is I think there has been a decrease in flying activity, which means fewer airplanes aloft, you're less likely to have a collision. The other thing, though, is a positive, is that many aircraft are now being equipped, either retrofitted or coming out of the factories, with collision detection equipment, traffic information service and TCAS and that sort of thing. And I think that has proven to be tremendously helpful. Now, in this particular case, we don't know whether this equipment was on board either of these aircraft. And of course, air traffic control services do help. What's interesting about this particular mishap, or maybe it's not interesting, is that it fits a perfect stereotype. It's a beautiful VFR day. We're within 5 miles of a non-towered airport, and that describes probably 60% of the mid-air collisions. Now, I don't know that they were in the traffic pattern yet, mm-hmm. per se, but they were may have been working towards that.
Okay. Does the Air Safety Institute have some resources to help pilots learn about mid-airs and how to avoid them?
We do. We have a safety advisor that's available online for anybody to download. It's about 12 pages, and it's chock full of all of the information that we have available for avoiding mid-air collisions. It talks about scan patterns, it talks about where collisions are likely to occur, basic radio techniques, to advise other pilots of where you're going to be. The sterile cockpit is something that we highly recommend, that when you are within 10 miles of any airport, that you're focusing exclusively on operational items, which includes scanning outside. The other thing is to make sure that you have your avionics programmed for both communication and navigation, so that you can be heads up and eyes outside as you get to what is a high-density traffic area.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of scanning, I know there is a pattern or a way that one should scan. It's not good enough to just sort of swivel your head periodically.
Well, that goes into the physiology of how eyes focus. And basically, it takes a few seconds for somebody's eyes to really focus. And when you are changing your focal length from the instrument panel, which is about 3 feet away from you, out to infinity to be looking for traffic, it's going to take a little while to do that. And you can't just swivel your head and see things. So what is the recommended pattern typically is to say start with one sector of the windshield, mm-hmm. and do it in about 10-degree sections, and you can then scan the entire sky. And that doesn't mean that you are doing that constantly, because you may want to check your instruments periodically, but you go and you pick up where you left off. The other thing that's important to recognize is that our airplanes have built-in blind spots. So we have to work around those inherent limitations. Some aircraft have better cockpit visibility than others. If you're flying a high-wing airplane, before you make a turn, you always want to pick up a wing, take a look around behind you to make sure that there isn't somebody overtaking you or over in that quadrant of the turn before you put the wing down, which blocks your view. With a low-wing airplane, obviously it's not quite as problematic, but you still have to be cognizant of what's going on. In climb-out, obviously, once you get clear up to your maneuvering altitude, we want to adopt a cruise climb attitude and maybe gentle S-turns, because the nose of the aircraft is going to be blocking your forward visibility.
And one of the most common scenarios for a mid-air collision is a low-wing aircraft descending on top of a high-wing aircraft.
That is correct, and the most dangerous area of all is the final approach. Pun intended, I suppose, but that's where everything is funneling towards the runway. And one of the things that we recommend to people is base leg is one of your best last chances to clear the final. So Mom was right. Look both ways before crossing, and you want to be sure that when you turn onto the final approach, rather than just scanning over to look at the runway, let's be looking up the final and making sure that there isn't something else that may be a little bit faster coming in. The other point that I would make, and we could have a long conversation on this topic, is let's fly a fairly tight traffic pattern, because the longer you're out there and the farther away you are from the airport, the harder it's going to be for other people to see you.
And the rule on relative motion when you're looking out and looking at an aircraft?
Yeah, unfortunately, the physics of this does not work to our advantage. If you're on a collision course with anything, this applies to cars, boats, airplanes, or planets, is that if it doesn't appear to be moving as you are moving towards it, you are on a collision course. And unfortunately, the eye is constructed to see motion. So if something isn't moving, you're probably not going to be as attracted to it. And what happens, and this is discussed in the safety advisor, is that the target sits out there as a very small black dot typically, and then as it gets closer, it blossoms very, very rapidly. And so at that point, you may have only a few seconds to be able to take evasive action. So the idea is be aware of what's going on around you, and particularly as you are in climb out and descent and getting close to airports, be they towered or non-towered, that's where other airplanes are going to be, and we have the potential for a collision.
Great. All right. Thank you, Bruce. Good information.
My pleasure.